Hi everyone, Kendall Farnham here with some stories today at India Hook United Methodist Church. Couple of announcements just to let you know about tomorrow is Easter, April 4th, Sunday morning. We will have an Easter egg hunt here at the church at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's between our worship services. So everyone is invited, kids pre-K through 5th grade. Bring your family, bring a basket if you have one. We'll have a few baskets here for people who need one, but if you have one you can bring your own, and we'll be outside. It looks like the weather's going to be beautiful. Collect some Easter eggs and have a little outside fun together. Do bring your mask in case you need to come inside for anything, or if we end up moving in, but the weather forecast currently is beautiful. We will have Easter worship tomorrow. Should be quite fun. It's my first time for this worship service, so I'm excited. And then at 8:30 and 11 o'clock in our sanctuary, we will have Easter worship as well, and everyone is invited to that. Masks on for that, please, and remember to stay distant from people who aren't in your household. Things are getting better with vaccinations and things in a lot of ways, but we need to still be very careful about spreading the virus. So, stories for today. Tomorrow is Easter, as I said, so we have some Easter Bunny books, kind of just silly ones. And then we're going to read a little bit of a book by Beverly Cleary, who was an author of children's books, who wrote a lot of books. And she died on March 25th, I think it was, and she was 104 years old when she died. She lived a long, long life. So we'll read a part of a book by her. I want to tell you first about this book. This is called The Tale of Three Trees, and I'm not going to read this one. I read this one during our Sunday school lesson, which is on the Facebook page just before this story time, and I read this at the beginning. So if you'd like to hear this book, you can just look at least at the beginning of that Sunday school lesson for today, April 3rd, and hear this story, which is quite beautiful. I like this one a lot. So let's look first at, let's see, let's do a silly Easter one. Oh, sorry, I fibbed. I said we do Easter Bunny, so we'll do this one called Every Bunny Count. And this one I don't think is specifically the Easter Bunny, but it's bunnies. So we'll take a look. Fox and bunnies like to play all together every day, playing hide and seek today. Every bunny count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Take your places, everyone. Ready or not, here we come. Everybody's going to go and hide. The search for Fox has just begun. Every bunny count to 1. We found some birds, away they flew. Every bunny count to 2. We've spotted something in the tree. Every bunny count to 3. Can you see 3 things in the tree? There are 3 squirrels. 1, 2, 3. Tiny creatures in my paw. Every bunny count to 4. Check the water, in we dive. Every bunny count to 5. Do you see 5 ducks? I think those are. Maybe that one's upside down. Look who's hiding in the sticks. Every bunny count to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And ribbit. Carrots, we're in bunny heaven. Every bunny count to 7. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bunnies. Where's that fox? It's getting late. Every bunny count to 8. Oh, can you see the snails on the plants here? There are 8 of those snails. Sleepy bunnies in a line. Every bunny count to 9. Let's see if we can see all the bunnies. Let's see. Oh, I think maybe with 9 sheep. Yep, 9 sheep altogether. A couple are in the corners, but that's 9 sheep. Through a bush, behind some rocks, every bunny look! It's Fox! They found Fox. Now take a peek inside the den. Every bunny count to 10. Oh my goodness, look at that. 10 fox. Baby foxes, I believe, are called kits. 10 fox kits. Very, very cute. Fox's bunnies, 1 to 10. Let's play hide and seek again. is the end of Every Bunny Counts. It is fun to play hide and seek, isn't it? It's been a long time since I played hide and seek, but especially if you have someplace really good to hide and you can hear people going by. All right, this silly book is called The Easter Egg Farm. Let's see what happens here. Pauline lived in Mrs. Pennyworth's hen house with 4 other hens. I think this is Pauline, and here's the other 4. Each day, Mrs. Pennyworth collected the eggs. "Only 4 eggs again today?" she asked. "Somebody isn't doing her job." "Are you all trying?" the hens clucked. "Well, try harder. I want 5 eggs tomorrow. Concentrate!" Pauline was embarrassed. She was the one not laying an egg. Every time she tried, the other hens squabbled. Pauline couldn't concentrate in all the confusion. "Pauline is lazy," one hen clucked. "I'm not lazy," Pauline said. "I'm just different." She turned her back on the others and concentrated very hard. Finally, a wonderful thing happened. Pauline stepped back to look at the egg in her nest. It wasn't like the other eggs, but Pauline thought it was beautiful. "Get a load of this," another hen cackled. "Pauline just laid the world's ugliest egg." "It's not ugly," Pauline said. "It's just different." But Pauline began to feel ashamed of her egg. She nudged it under the straw with her beak. The harder Pauline tried to lay a normal egg, the stranger her eggs got. She hid each one of them, but not before the other hens had seen them and made fun of her. When Pauline couldn't stand the teasing any longer, she made herself a nest outdoors. She stared at the sky, concentrating very hard. This time her egg came out blue with clouds. But before Pauline could hide the egg, someone saw it. Mrs. Pennyworth. "Pauline, what a lovely egg," she said, holding it up in the sunshine. "This is too unusual to crack open for my breakfast. I'll put it on my windowsill where everybody can enjoy it." The next day, Pauline laid an egg that was even more unusual. Mrs. Pennyworth was delighted. "Can you make more eggs like this?" Then Mrs. Pennyworth noticed the ladybug on a blade of grass right in front of Pauline. "Hey, I get it. The egg comes out looking like whatever you see, right?" Pauline blinked. She wasn't quite sure how it worked herself. "This is fantastic," Mrs. Pennyworth said. "Come into the house with me. We'll see what kind of eggs you lay there." Pauline loved being inside. There were lots of pretty things to look at. In her new surroundings, Pauline became quite creative. Soon her unusual eggs lined the windows of Mrs. Pennyworth's house. One day, a lady appeared at the window. "Are these lovely Easter eggs for sale? I need one for every child in town. They're for the annual Easter egg hunt." "No problem. We can lay that many eggs, can't we, Pauline?" "We," thought Pauline. She'd never seen Mrs. Pennyworth lay an egg, so she knew it was up to her. Laying eggs for the Easter egg hunt would be an honor, she clucked happily. "Come back for your eggs the night before Easter," said Mrs. Pennyworth. Pauline was excited. She started laying 2 eggs a day, then 3, then 4. Mrs. Pennyworth began taking Pauline on field trips for inspiration. The first week, they went to the art museum. The second week, they went to the ballet. Pauline was so thrilled by the music and dancing, she laid more eggs than ever when they got home. Finally, it was the day before Easter. "The egg lady will be here tonight," said Mrs. Pennyworth. "I'd better start packing up the eggs." She lifted an egg from the windowsill. "Uh-oh, there's a crack in this shell." Mrs. Pennyworth ran to another window. "Pauline, some of the eggs are hatching. We shouldn't have left them in the sunshine." Soon baby chicks were popping out all over the sunny side of the house. "Stay in there!" Mrs. Pennyworth shouted at the unhatched You're ruining the eggs!" But the chicks didn't listen. They just kept hatching and hatching. Mrs. Pennyworth took the broken shells to the table and frantically tried to glue them together. "It's no use. I was never any good at craft projects." Just then there was a knock at the door. "Yoo-hoo!" called the egg lady. "I'm here for the Easter eggs." "Do I have a deal for you?" cried Mrs. Pennyworth. "How would you like Easter chicks instead of eggs?" "Terrific!" the egg lady said as bright-colored chicks scurried around her. "Easter chicks are even better than Easter eggs." Mrs. Pennyworth helped the egg lady gather the chicks, but as fast as they were popped into a basket, the chicks jumped out again. Mrs. Pennyworth heard a clucking noise and looked up. Her normal size, she spread her wings like an umbrella, protecting the chicks who raced toward her. "Oh, Pauline," said Mrs. Pennyworth. "Of course we can't give away the chicks. They're your babies." "But what about the Easter egg hunt?" the egg lady asked. The eggs on the shady side of the house didn't hatch, said Mrs. Pennyworth said. You can take those. Pauline kept all of her babies. She loved being a mother. Every day she took her chicks for a walk, showing them the beautiful things around the farm. The chicks' grown-up feathers started to come in. These chicks sure are different, said Mrs. Pennyworth. Pauline clucked proudly. Soon Pauline's daughters were laying their own eggs. They took turns in the nest box, laying eggs of every color and design. Children from miles around came to see the unusual eggs and chickens. Mrs. Pennyworth's farm became known as the Easter Egg Farm. Pauline still lives on the Easter Egg Farm, but she doesn't lay as many eggs as she used to. Now, whenever she feels an egg coming on, Pauline closes her eyes. She doesn't just to be different. And that is the end. What a silly, silly book. Pretty sure that's not the way eggs work. I've never seen a chicken do that. But a few toys and some stickers. All right, this next book is called The Easter Bunny That Overslept. And lots of pretty colorful eggs for this. To all the children. But it was Easter Day and it was raining. Snug in his bed, the bunny slept on. The children woke up excited, but there were no eggs to find, only the jelly beans. That month it rained every day. Then in May, the sun came out. The bunny woke up. Yawn, stretch. Quickly, he put on his Easter clothes and hopped and sang all the way to the first house. My eggs are blue, red and green too, a pink one for you, all nice and new. Hoppity, happity, Easter to you. Yep, 2 pigs. There we go. A family sat in their garden eating a big pink cake. The Easter bunny proudly offered them his basket of eggs. What's this? Exclaimed the father. Why, it's the Easter bunny, said the little girl. The mother shook her head. Easter was weeks ago. Today is Mother's Day, the boy added. Then the baby said the only words he knew. Bye-bye. After June came July, and why, I'll be a 4th of July bunny, he thought. He made himself a spectacular hat and repainted his eggs, red, white, and blue, with stars and stripes. On the 4th of July, he hopped to town, where everyone was watching a parade. What a parade! Trumpets and trombones, flags and floats, soldiers, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts marched, and hopping along to their drumbeat was the 4th of July bunny with his basket of eggs. Stop the parade, the mayor shouted. Who are you? The rabbit felt shy. Well, I'm really the Easter bunny, he said in a tiny voice, but I overslept and missed Easter. Then he held up his basket of eggs. Happy 4th of July, everybody! The 4th of July is no time for eggs, the mayor said crossly. Now go away. The parade marched on and the children followed, forgetting all about the Easter bunny. He was left alone. He tried knocking on doors, offering his painted eggs, but everyone thought he was joking. Far away, crowds cheered. Fell asleep again. Summer passed. Autumn came and the leaves blew down from the trees. Still the bunny slept. One spooky night when the wind was howling, the bunny heard a knock at his door. 3 little ghosts stood outside. Trick or treat! They shouted, for it was Halloween. Wait right there, the bunny cried happily and hopped inside to get his Easter eggs. The children were surprised to see a basket of eggs. What are those? They asked. Easter eggs! 4th of July eggs! The little bunny sighed and hung his head. Why bother to explain? No one wanted his eggs. They looked so sad that the children didn't play a trick on him. They just ran away, laughing and shouting. Easter eggs on Halloween! Who ever heard of such a thing? The Easter bunny stood in his doorway, shivering in the wind. He waited for other children to come, but they didn't. Suddenly, a fierce gale swept the little rabbit off his feet and carried him high up in the air. He landed a long way away. At first all he could see was snow. Then he read a sign, Santa's house, and followed its arrow, hopping down a path between rows of Christmas trees. At Santa's door he knocked very timidly. "Well, bless my soul," Santa said when he saw the bunny. "Come in, come in." The little rabbit told Santa everything that had happened since he had overslept on Easter. "Well now," said Santa, "there's nothing we can do about your Easter eggs, of course, but if you want to make the children happy, I have plenty of work for you." The bunny painted toys, dolls and drums, airplanes and elephants and toys, and tops like spinning color wheels. He had such a good time, he forgot all about the eggs that nobody wanted. On Christmas Eve, Santa loaded his sleigh and asked the Easter Bunny to come along. Off they flew. Some of the rooftops where they landed had narrow chimneys. The Easter Bunny would take the toys from Santa's sack and slide down the chimneys easily. Each time, Santa marveled, "I never could hop up and down those chimneys as fast as that." Then the reindeer flew on to the next house. After all the presents had been delivered, they returned to Santa's for cookies and hot chocolate. The Easter Bunny was growing tired and wanted to go home to his snug little bed. "Wait," Santa said, "I have a gift for you, too." Inside the box was a gold alarm clock. "Oh, thank you, Santa. I'll set it to go off Easter Sunday." Months later, when the alarm clock rang, the Easter Bunny jumped up and filled 2 baskets of eggs. He hopped to the first house. The baby, who could say only bye-bye, knew more words now. "Hi, Easter Bunny," he called, and took an egg. "Happy Easter," the bunny said gaily. That spring, everyone wanted his beautiful eggs, and because of the gold alarm clock, the Easter Bunny was never late again. And that is the end. Well, that book has a little bit about all kinds of holidays in it, doesn't it? An Easter egg. All right, I want to read a little bit of this book by Beverly Cleary. It's called Henry Huggins. This book was written in 1950, so that's a long time ago. That's before even I was born. And this is a little different than what we usually read because it's there are a few pictures, but it's more words. But I think we can read the first chapter and see what happens with Henry. And when there's a picture, I'll show it to you. But otherwise, I'm going to hold this book like this so that I can read it without craning my neck. Henry Huggins was in the 3rd grade. His hair looked like a scrubbing brush, and most of his grown-up front teeth were in. He lived with his mother and father in a square white house on Klickitat Street. Except for having his tonsils out when he was 6 and breaking his arm falling out of a cherry tree when he was 7, nothing much happened to Henry. "I wish something exciting would happen," Henry often thought. But nothing very interesting ever happened to Henry, at least not until one Wednesday afternoon in March. After he swam for an hour, he got on the bus again and went for dinner. It was fun, but not really exciting. When Henry left the YMCA on this particular Wednesday, he stopped to watch a man tear down a circus poster. Then, with 3 nickels and 1 dime in his pocket, he went to the corner drugstore to buy a chocolate ice cream cone. He thought he would eat the ice cream cone, get on the bus, drop his dime in the slot, and ride home. That is not what happened. He bought the ice cream cone and paid for it with 1 of his nickels. On his way out of the drugstore, he stopped to look at funny books. It was a free look because he had only 2 nickels left. He stood there licking his chocolate ice cream cone and reading one of the funny books when he heard a thump, thump, thump. Henry turned, and there behind him was a dog. The dog was scratching himself. He wasn't any special kind of dog. He was too small to be a big dog, but on the other hand, he was much too big to be a little dog. He wasn't a white dog because parts of him were brown and other parts were black, and in between there were yellowish patches. His ears stood up and his tail was long and thin. The dog was hungry. When Henry licked, he licked. When Henry swallowed, he swallowed. "Hello, you old dog," Henry said. "You can't have my ice cream cone." Swish, swish, swish went the tail. "Just 1 bite," the dog's brown eyes seemed to say. "Go away," ordered Henry. He wasn't very firm about it. He patted the dog's head. We do have a picture here of Henry with his chocolate ice cream cone, and there's the dog. The tail wagged harder. Henry took 1 last lick. "Oh, all right," he said. "If you're that hungry, you might as well have it." The ice cream cone disappeared in 1 gulp. "Now go away," Henry told the dog. "I have to catch a bus for home." He started for the door. The dog started too. "Go away, you skinny old dog." Henry didn't say it very loudly. "Go on home." The dog sat down at Henry's feet. Henry looked at the dog, and the dog looked at Henry. "I don't think you've got a home." "You're awful thin. Your ribs show right through your skin." "Thump, thump, thump," replied the tail. "And you haven't got a collar," said Henry. He began to think. If only he could keep the dog. He had always wanted a dog of his very own, and now he had found a dog that wanted him. He couldn't go home and leave a hungry dog on the street corner. If only he knew what his mother and father would say. He fingered the 2 nickels in his pocket. That was it. He would use one of the nickels to phone his mother. "Come on, Ribsy. Come on, Ribs, old boy. I'm going to call you Ribsy because you're so thin." The dog trotted after the boy to the telephone booth in the corner of the drugstore. Henry shoved him into the booth and shut the door. He had never used a pay telephone before. He had to put the telephone book on the floor and stand on tiptoe on it to reach the mouthpiece. He gave the operator his number and dropped his nickel into the coin box. "Hello, Mom?" "Why, Henry!" His mother sounded surprised. "Where are you?" "At the drugstore near the Y." Ribs began to scratch. Thump, thump, thump. Inside the telephone booth, the thumps sounded loud and hollow. "For goodness sake, Henry, what's that noise?" his mother demanded. Ribs began to whimper and then to howl. "Henry!" Mrs. Huggins shouted. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I'm all right," Henry shouted back. He never could understand why his mother always thought something had happened to him when nothing ever did. "That's just Ribsy." "Ribsy?" His mother was exasperated. "Henry, will you please tell me what is going on?" "I'm trying to," said Henry. Ribsy howled louder. People were gathering around the phone booth to see what was going on. "Mother, I found a dog. I sure wish I could keep him. He's a good dog, and I'd feed him and wash him and everything. Please, Mom." "I don't know, dear," his mother said. "You'll have to ask your father." "Mom!" Henry wailed. "That's what you always say." Henry was tired of standing on tiptoe, and the phone booth was getting warm. "Mom, please say yes, and I'll never ask for another thing as long as I live." "Well, all right, Henry. I guess there isn't any reason why you shouldn't have a dog, but you'll have to bring him home on the bus. Your father has the car today, and I can't come after you. Can you manage?" "Sure, easy." "And Henry, please don't..." "Henry, what's that thumping noise?" "It's my dog, Ribsy. He's scratching a flea." "Oh, Henry." Had a hard time getting him into the bus and was wondering how he would get a dime out of his pocket when the driver said, "Say, Sonny, you can't take that dog in the bus." "Why not?" asked Henry. "It's a company rule, Sonny. No dogs on buses." "Golly, mister, how am I going to get him home? I just have to get him home." "Sorry, Sonny, I didn't make the rule. No animal can ride on a bus unless it's inside a box." "Well, thanks anyway," said Henry doubtfully, and lifted Ribsy off the bus. "Well, I guess we'll have to get a box. I'll get you onto the next bus somehow," promised Henry. He went back into the drugstore, followed closely by Ribsy. "Have you got a big box I could have, please?" he asked the man at the toothpaste counter. "I need one big enough for my dog." The clerk He didn't want to be late getting home. The clerk pulled a box out from under the counter. "This hair tonic carton is the only one I have. I guess it's big enough, but why anyone would want to put a dog in a cardboard box, I can't understand." The box was about 2 feet square and 6 inches deep. On one end was printed, "Don't let them call you Baldy," and on the other, "Try our large economy size." Henry thanked the clerk, carried the box out to the bus stop, and put it on the sidewalk. Ribsy padded after him. "Get in, fellow," Henry commanded. Ribsy understood. He stepped into the box and sat down just as the bus came around the corner. Henry had to kneel to pick up the box. It was not a very strong box, and he had to put his arms under it. He staggered as he lifted it, feeling like the strong man who lifted weights at the circus. Ribsy lovingly licked his face with his wet pink tongue. "Hey, cut that out," Henry ordered. "You better be good if you're going to ride on the bus with me." The bus stopped at the curb. When it was Henry's turn to get on, he had trouble finding the step because he couldn't see his feet. He had to try several times before he hit it. Then he discovered he had forgotten to take his dime out of his pocket. He was afraid to put the box down for fear Ribsy might escape. He turned sideways to the driver and asked politely, "Will you please take the dime out of my pocket for me? My hands are full." The driver pushed his cap back on his head and exclaimed, "Full? I should say they are full. And just where do you think you're going with that animal?" "Home?" said Henry in a small voice. Here's a picture of Henry trying to get Ribsy onto the bus in the little box. It's not very much of a box, is it? The passengers were staring, and most of them were smiling. The box was getting heavier every minute. "Not on this bus you're not," said the driver. "But the man on the last bus said I could take the dog on the bus in a box," protested Henry, who was afraid he couldn't hold the dog much longer. "He said it was a company rule." He meant a big box tied shut, a box with holes punched in it for the dog to breathe through. Henry was horrified to hear Ribsy growl. "Shut up," he ordered. Ribsy began to scratch his left ear with his left hind foot. The box began to tear. Ribsy jumped out of the box and off the bus, and Henry jumped after him. The bus pulled away with a puff of exhaust. "Now see what you've done. You've spoiled everything." The dog hung his head and tucked his tail between his legs. "If I can't get you home, how can I keep you?" Henry sat down on the curb to think. It was so late and the clouds were so dark that he didn't want to waste time looking for a big box. His mother was probably beginning to worry about him. People were stopping on the corner to wait for the next bus. Among them, Henry noticed an elderly lady carrying a large paper shopping bag full of apples. The shopping bag gave him an idea. Jumping up, he snapped his fingers at Ribs and ran back into the drugstore. "You back again?" asked the toothpaste clerk. "What do you want this time? String and paper to wrap your dog in?" "No, sir," said Henry. "I want one of those big nickel shopping bags." He laid his last nickel on the counter. "Well, I'll be darned," said the clerk, and handed the bag across the counter. Henry opened the bag and set it up on the floor. He picked up Ribsy and shoved him hind feet first into the bag. Then he pushed his front feet in. A lot of Ribsy was left over. The clerk was leaning over the counter watching. "I guess I'll have to have some string and paper too," Henry said, "if I can have some free." "Well, now I've seen everything." The clerk shook his head as he handed a piece of string and a big sheet of paper across the counter. Ribsy whimpered, but he held still while Henry wrapped the paper loosely around his head and shoulders and tied it with the string. The dog made a lumpy package, but by taking one handle of the bag in each hand, Henry was able to carry it to the bus stop. He didn't think the bus driver would notice him. It was getting dark, and a crowd of people, most of them with packages, was waiting on the pavement. A few spatters of rain hit the pavement. This time Henry remembered his dime. Both hands were full, so he held the dime in his teeth and stood behind the woman with the bag of apples. Ribsy wiggled and whined, even though Henry tried to pet him through the paper. When the bus stopped, he climbed on behind the lady, quickly set the bag down, dropped his dime in the slot, picked up the bag, and squirmed through the crowd to a seat beside a fat man near the back of the bus. Henry sighed with relief. The driver was the same one he had met on the first bus, but Ribs was on the bus at last. Now, if he could only keep him quiet for 15 minutes, they would be home, and Ribsy would be his for keeps. The next time the bus stopped, Henry saw Scooter McCarthy, a 5th grader at school, get on and make his way through the crowd to the back of the bus. "Just my luck," thought Henry. "I'll bet he wants to know what's in my bag." "Hi," said Scooter. "Hi," said Henry. "What you got in that bag?" asked Scooter. "None of your beeswax," answered Henry. Scooter looked at Henry. Henry looked at Scooter. Crackle, crackle, crackle went the bag. Henry tried to hold it more tightly between his knees. "There's something alive in that bag," Scooter said accusingly. "Shut up, Scooter," whispered Henry. "Ah, shut up yourself," said Scooter. "You've got something alive in that bag." By this time, the passengers at the back of the bus were staring at Henry and his package. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Henry tried to pat Ribsy again through the paper. The bag crackled even louder. Then it began to wiggle. "Come on, tell us what's in the bag," coaxed the fat man. Nothing," stammered Henry. "Just something I found." "Maybe it's a rabbit," suggested one passenger. "I think it's kicking." "No, it's too big for a rabbit," said another. "I'll bet it's a baby," said Scooter. "I'll bet you kidnapped a baby." "I did not." Ribs began to whimper and then to howl. Crackle, 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 thump, thump, thump. Ribsy scratched his way out of the bag. "Well, I'll be doggoned!" exclaimed the fat man and began to laugh. "I'll be doggoned!" "It's just a skinny old dog," said Scooter. And here's the picture on the bus, there at the bottom. "He is not. He's a good dog." Henry tried to keep Ribsy between his knees. The bus lurched around a corner and started to go uphill. Henry was thrown against the fat man. The frightened dog wiggled away from him, squirmed between the passengers, and started for the front of the bus. "Here, Ribsy, old boy, come back here," called Henry and started after him. "Eek! A dog!" squealed the lady with the bag of apples. "Go away, doggy, go away!" Ribsy was scared. He tried to run and crashed into the lady's bag of apples. The bag tipped over and the apples began to roll toward the back of the bus, which was grinding up a steep hill. The apples rolled around the feet of the people who were standing. Passengers began to slip and slide. They dropped their packages and grabbed one another. Crash! A high school girl dropped an armload of books. Rattle! Bang! Crash! A lady dropped a big paper bag. The bag broke open and pots and pans rolled out. Thud! A man dropped a coil of garden hose. The hose unrolled and the passengers found it wound around their legs. People were sitting on the floor. They were sitting on books and apples. They were even sitting on other people's laps. Some of them had their hats over their faces and their feet in the air. Screech! The driver threw on the brakes and turned around in his seat, just as Henry made his way through the apples and books and pans and hose to catch Ribsy. The driver pushed his cap back on his head. Okay, Sonny, he said to Henry. Now you know why dogs aren't allowed on buses? Yes, sir, said Henry in a small voice. I'm sorry. You're sorry? A lot of good that does. Look at this bus. Look at those people. I didn't mean to make any trouble, said Henry. My mother said I could keep the dog if I could bring him home on the bus. The fat man began to snicker. Then he chuckled. Then he laughed and then he roared. He laughed until tears streamed down his cheeks, and all the other passengers were laughing too, even the man with the hose and the lady with the apples. The driver didn't laugh. Take that dog and get off the bus, he ordered. Ribsy whimpered and tucked his tail between his legs. The fat man stopped laughing. See here, driver, he said. You can't put that boy and his dog off in the rain. Well, he can't stay on the bus, snapped the driver. Henry didn't know what he was going to do. He guessed he'd have to walk the rest of the way home. He wasn't sure he knew the way in the dark. Just then a siren screamed. It grew louder and louder until it stopped right alongside the bus. A policeman appeared in the entrance. Is there a boy called Henry Huggins on this bus? He asked. Oh, boy, you're going to be arrested for having a dog on the bus, gloated Scooter. I'll bet you have to go to jail. I'm him, said Henry in a very small voice. I am he, corrected the lady with the apples, who had been a school teacher and couldn't help correcting boys. You'd better come along with us, said the policeman. Boy, you're sure going to get it, said Scooter. Surely going to get it, corrected the apple lady. Henry and Ribsy followed the policeman off the bus and into the squad car, where Henry and the dog sat in the back seat. Are you going to arrest me? Henry asked timidly. Well, I don't know. Do you think you ought to be arrested? No, sir, said Henry politely. He thought the policeman was joking, but he wasn't sure. It was hard to tell about grown-ups sometimes. I didn't mean to do anything. I just had to get Ribsy home. My mother said I could keep him if I could bring him home on the bus. What do you think? The officer asked his partner, who was driving the squad car. Well, I think we might let him off this time, answered the driver. His mother must be pretty worried about him if she called the police, and I don't think she'd want him to go to jail. Yes, he's late for his dinner already. Let's see how fast we can get him home. The driver pushed a button and the siren began to shriek. Ribsy raised his head and howled. The tires sucked at the wet pavement and the windshield wipers slip-slopped. Henry began to enjoy himself. Wouldn't this be something to tell the kids at school? Automobiles pulled over to the curb as the police car went faster and faster. Even the bus Henry had been on had to pull over and stop. Henry waved to the passengers. They waved back. Up the hill the police car sped and around the corner until they came to Klickitat Street and then to Henry's block and then pulled up in front of his house. And there's a picture of the police car with Henry and Ribsy sticking his head out and the bus they're going past. Henry's mother and father were standing on the porch waiting for him. The neighbors were looking out of their windows. Well, said his father after the policeman had gone, it's about time you came home. So this is Ribsy. I've heard about you, fellow. And there's a big bone and a can of Feely's flea flakes waiting for you. Henry, what will you do next? Sighed his mother. Golly, Mom, I didn't do anything. I just brought my dog home on the bus like you said. Ribsy sat down and began to scratch. And that is the end of that first chapter of Henry Huggins by Beverly Cleary. And you can tell that book was written quite a long time ago. The ice cream cone cost a nickel, and the bus ride was a dime. And so that was from a long time ago. And you notice Henry had to use a pay telephone to call his mom. Call anybody wherever they were anytime. That is the end of our time for today. Thank you so much. I hope you have a blessed Easter weekend. You are invited to join us for Easter things tomorrow, and we'd love to see you. Stay safe and be well, and remember that you are loved, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.